see either the slightly different from what they are, or when we talk, you see things are not normal.
Where's Gurma? I hear Sasquatch Chronicles. How come you no do show called Dogman Chronicles? Me very mad. Send Alpo or Purina. This Dogman speaking.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. If you've seen something paranormal and you want to share your story with us, you can email strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. Well, tonight's show, despite the opening, it's not going to be about Dogman.
Oh.
People might be wondering what that's about.
Isn't that in reference to something that Wes...
Yes, Wes had a little something at the beginning of his show last week. I'm going to go ahead and play that now so people can kind of get the context.
I hear Timothy Renner from Strange Familiars Podcast is looking for where my footprints went. Tell him a little town hall. None of your damn business. This is Bigfoot, and you are listening to Sasquatch Chronicles.
So Bigfoot called me out on Wes's show, and sure enough, Dogman left a message for Wes on my show.
I'd like to say also that Dogman was played by neither you nor I.
No. If you want to know who played Dogman, we'll reveal it at the end of the show.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Yesterday, March 31st, 2021. A date which will live in infamy. Sasquatch Chronicles was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of the podcast Strange Familiars. I ask the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack, a state of war has existed between Sasquatch Chronicles and the Empire of the Strange Familiars podcast.
It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Cliff Barrackman from the Bigfoot and Beyond podcast is the greatest Bigfoot researcher alive today. Ask him, he will tell you.
Shots fired, I guess. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. Having a little fun with Timothy Renner over at the Strange Familiars podcast. Poor President Roosevelt. He's probably rolling over in his grave, knowing his beautiful speech was used in such a manner. And don't send me a million emails. Cliff really doesn't think he's the greatest Bigfoot researcher ever. Just ask him. It was a joke if you didn't catch it. Tonight we'll actually be chatting with Jonathan and his son Dylan. And it's kind of it's a really fascinating encounter. Happened in Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas, in Henderson. Kind of not even really Henderson, more like the outskirts of Henderson. Middle of the desert, and it's one of those encounters. Jonathan was really into Sasquatch. He loved the topic. He would watch shows on it, and his whole family goofed on him for it. Even Dylan, they would relentlessly goof on Jonathan, a family loving way, but they would goof on him for the whole Bigfoot thing. And one night his son Dylan was coming home and actually saw the creature. And then Jonathan eventually saw the creature too as well. Very fascinating account. It's really cool to have two different. I always love having two witnesses of one event because they were both present when the father Jonathan saw the creature, and the perspective you get from two different people. I don't know why that fascinates me. It always has. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. I'll be back on Sunday for the members. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Jonathan to the show. Jonathan, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, Jonathan. Very much excited to have you on. And I always love desert encounters, and there's plenty of them. Go to look at New Mexico, go look at Southern California, Arizona, Nevada. There's plenty of desert encounters. And I know you guys are in kind of the outskirts of the Las Vegas metropolitan area. You guys had this encounter. Before we actually jump into it, I want to also welcome Dylan to the show. Dylan, thanks for coming on, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, Dylan. And Jonathan, before we actually get into the encounter, I talked about a little bit about it there in the beginning of the show. But for the audience, what was kind of your take on the whole Sasquatch topic prior to Dylan coming into the home and telling you what he saw?
Well, as my son can probably attest, I've been kind of interested in Sasquatch and, Bigfoot type things for the last few years, just, watching shows, and didn't really discover podcasts until more recently, but watching shows on TV. And so I had an interest overall in it, but it was kind of a passive interest in the phenomenon. And so, I still had a bit of interest. My family was aware of that. And so I just never thought there'd ever be anything that would ever happen in Vegas, that there'd ever be any sort of opportunity to ever even come across something like that in the, Southern Nevada area. But I've always had some interest in it, and thought it was quite interesting, and thought there certainly could be the chance that there's something like Sasquatch out there.
I gotcha. And before we get to what happened to Dylan, kind of walk me into that evening or that day. Kind of what were you doing right before Dylan came in, and then what did Dylan tell you?
Well, it was about 11:30 at night. This was in April of this last year, so just a year ago. And we lived in Henderson, Nevada at the time, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, just getting all the lights shut off and everything, getting ready for bed that night. And I was downstairs locking up and turning off the lights, and Dylan came walking in looking pretty shaken up, and a little pale, and said, Dad, I think I just saw Bigfoot. And I thought he was joking, like making fun of me, because I've had a little bit of interest in Bigfoot over the years. And so I said, "Oh, no way." And he goes, "No, I'm serious." And just by the way he looked, it was kind of evident that he wasn't joking around. And so I had him tell me, what had occurred. And where we lived out in Henderson is just on the edge of the city. And so outside of our development, it's just desert on the east side of the valley there. And it's just desert all the way out to Lake Mead from where we live. And so there's a lot of wildlife out there and things. And so I had him describe, what he had seen, just thinking that it must have been a person that he saw or something like that he was mistaken about. But he described what happened, which was he was driving up to our development. And as you drive up to the gate of our development, the road can continue to go straight, and it just dead ends right into the desert there, right at where you turn into our development. And he said as he was driving up that the headlights lit up right on the edge of the desert there, where there's some barricades, lit up a very tall thing standing there that was completely black, and that it was tall. It had a cone-shaped head, and that it started walking away. He said, just like the Bigfoot walks on I think that Patterson film that you see. And it really freaked him out. So I had him describe it a little more and asked him why he didn't drive up closer to try to get a better view of it. And he said, frankly, because he was terrified, because he had never seen anything like that in his life. And so I believed him. And so we headed out right then to see if we could see anything, and got in the truck and went back to where he saw it. And there was nothing there at that time. And so at that point, kind of dismissed it as a likelihood that he did see something kind of strange, but myself not really having any clear idea of what it could have been. And so that was kind of his initial experience with it, and what he had conveyed to me.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be shocking, especially your son coming in and being like, "Hey, I saw this thing," and you wouldn't think you would see it where you're at. I have had reports from your guys' general area, more around Mount Charleston. I know that's a complete opposite direction from where you guys saw this thing. But I do get reports out there, and it always throws me off when I get those reports from the desert, because it's like, where do they go? So he comes in, he tells you what he saw. Did you guys go out and look for prints or anything like that out after he came in and told you what he saw?
I didn't that night with Dylan, but his older brother, who was also home at the time, after we got back, they did go out together to look. And the dirt's really hard there, so it's not really set up to pick up footprints. But they did find what looked like the outline of a footprint, and they took a picture of it, and that's something that I could certainly send to you. And it does look, generally like the outline of a very huge footprint.
Yeah, I'd love to see them. I absolutely would love to see the pictures. I know that dirt out there is like concrete. I mean, it's pretty hard to get a print anyway, but I'd still like to check it out. Dylan, let me ask you, so you're out there, you're driving home, and if you would, from your perspective, kind of tell us what happened. Just kind of walk us into the whole situation, what you actually saw that night.
Yeah, of course. So pretty much what had happened was it was about 11:30 at night, like my dad said. And we have like this super dark road right behind our community. And I was in my dad's truck driving up it. And it's about the end of the road that like leads to the desert, it's like about, I want to say 50 yards from where a stop sign is. So I'd stopped at this stop sign and I was pulling up past it going down this road, and there's about 4 giant reflective signs at the very end that like line up where the desert starts. I don't even know how to explain it. It was like this thing that was like 8 feet. So the reflective signs are about 6 feet tall. And this thing, its head was about a foot above the reflective sign. So this thing was probably about 8 feet tall. And it was super dark. I can't even explain it. It's weird. And it had a pointy head also. And its arms were super long. And it crossed past these 4 reflective signs in like 4 steps. And then at that point, I was going about 60 miles per hour around these corners to get home, and we got it on our doorbell video. It's just me running inside, just how terrified I was, because this thing just was not human. It was like 8 feet tall, pointy head. Its arms were like 4 feet long. It was very disturbing, I want to say.
Yeah, it would shake me up. It definitely would shake me up, even though you were in a truck, and just seeing something so out of place, something so unnatural, definitely would shake me up. You know, a lot of people, they think they're not going to run into Sasquatch in the desert. And if you go with the ape theory, that would make sense. You know, where does it go? How does it survive? I got like a million questions, but I can't tell you how many reports I get from New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Southern California. I remember the first time I went down to Southern California, I thought, no way is Sasquatch down here. There's nowhere for it to hide. Where does it go? But then you start talking to law enforcement and border patrol agents, and they've run into them a lot down there. So it always throws me off. It's hard to know what to make of that. I want to ask you, Dylan, what did you think of the whole topic of Bigfoot or Sasquatch prior to seeing this thing?
Before this, I didn't really. I mean, with our religion and stuff, like we have the story, so I believed it to be true, but then again, I didn't really actually believe that there was this kind of stuff. And I'd always supported my dad with like him trying to hunt Bigfoot and everything. And I just honestly myself did not believe that this stuff was real. And then after that night, just seeing that thing, just seeing how tall it was and that there's actually things like this, I most definitely believe in this stuff now.
Yeah, and I know you're speculating, Dylan, but I'm just kind of curious. What do you think the creature was doing?
I couldn't even tell you. This thing, maybe looking for food or something out in the desert. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So you guys actually go out and look for tracks, and I've lived in that area, and I know full well the ground is like a concrete. You know, it's like concrete. It's I can't imagine trying to get a track out of there. But you guys actually found tracks.
Yeah, we did actually. It was these 2 steps. I want to say the feet prints were like a foot long, maybe. But yeah, we did find 2 footsteps, and we took pictures of them actually.
That's very cool. You guys found tracks out there. That's very, very cool. Jonathan, I want to ask you kind of what's going through your mind as a dad, and Dylan comes in, he's telling you this, and I know, you know, once you get past the point, you realize he's not giving you a hard time. He's being very, very serious about what he saw. What's kind of going through your mind at this point?
I was kind of taken aback, but a little bit excited to think that there's even a small chance that there would be something like that in southern Nevada and especially right outside of our community there. So of course I wanted to head out right then and take a look and see if we couldn't see it, because like I said, I had a passive interest in Sasquatch, and you know, someday I was hoping I could, you know, go on some sort of hunt at some place, you know, understanding that, you know, there's certainly risks with it, but so I just kind of had an armchair obsession with it. So it was kind of exciting to think that there might be something like that in southern Nevada that you could, you know, possibly come across at some point. So I was a little bit excited with the fact that there might be really something like that, as well as a little nervous that if that were the case, that, there were something like that so close to our home.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Almost too close to the home. I want to ask you, Jonathan or Dylan, what was that the only thing that ever happened out there? Was that the only time you guys ever had a run-in, or anything strange ever happened to you out there?
No, I mean, after this occurred, there were a couple of more instances where Dylan saw the same creature, and I had the opportunity to actually see it about a week later. And so that was that was exciting. It was a little bit scary too, because of what occurred at the time. So,
well, let's come back to what you saw, Jonathan. Dylan, tell me about that second sighting.
So it had started off with me, my twin, and my friend. We were actually up in the desert behind our house messing around with laser pointers because our dad had told us that like these things are attracted to laser pointers. So we went and got some, and we were just messing around out there, and we had actually seen like this 8-foot tall black figure again. So we hopped back in our truck, and then we went and picked up our dad. And then coming up that same back road, we actually saw it again with the brights of the trucks on, and it had walked in the exact same spot, heading up into the desert. So then we had our dad drive up there, and then behind this desert part, there's like a concrete block thing that blocks off like any cars from entering the desert. So we had actually gone up the curb and went around up into the desert, and we had turned the car off and rolled all the windows down. And then I'll let my dad explain what happened next because he was very excited about it.
okay, yeah. So they had. It's about 10:30 or 11 at night again, about a week later, and this time Dylan, his brother, twin brother Bryson, and their friend came in the house and said, that that thing was back. And so I said, "Oh, no way, really?" And they said, "Yeah." And so I had them just describe briefly what happened, which was that once again up by those barricades just past it, that they were up there messing around with the laser pointer and shining it at people that were, there's a little overlook where people make out and do other things, and they were doing what teenagers do, which is annoying those people parked there and shining the laser at them, and that they noticed a tall figure standing a little ways off, and that at a certain point they kind of figured that it might be that tall creature again. And so I said, well, let's get flashlights and get in the truck and go up there and let's see if we can see it. I was excited with the possibility of actually seeing this thing. And so we got a bunch of big flashlights. We got in my truck, and Dylan was driving, and we turned up the road to head towards those barricades. And I was playing with my phone, trying to turn it on to record just in the small chance that we saw something. I really didn't believe that we actually would. And as I'm fiddling with it, Dylan and his brother yell, "Well, there it is," and point up the road. And so I look up, and I guess I dropped my phone onto the floor. I wasn't even really thinking about it at that point, because when I looked up, they're standing in front of those barricades. And they're the big barricades that are like, if you remember from Vacation, where the movie Vacation, where they drive the family truckster through the big barricade and jump. It's a it's a big they're big barricades like that, where you can't drive forward anymore. And they are actually, I went and measured them later, they're 6.5 feet tall, and this creature was standing right there in front of them, and it was a couple of feet taller than the top of those barricades. And it started walking, took a couple of steps walking, and then started to run in front of those barricades, headed down the road at a 90-degree angle from us where we're driving up. And so we have the brights on, and it was a very tall creature. It wasn't bulky, though. It was pretty lanky, but very tall and cone-shaped head and completely black. So dark that it really seemed almost like it swallowed our headlights, the beam from our headlights. It was blacker than black. It was really, really weird. And the entire way that it walked was in a real strange way where it didn't like straighten its legs at all. And it almost walked in a weird bent over way. It was really strange. I'd never seen anything walk or then start to run that way ever. But within a few steps, as it took off, it was hauling. We pulled up and turned the corner, what I thought would be right behind it, and it was gone. It was nowhere to be seen. And where it went was where those cement barricades that Dylan mentioned are at. So we couldn't drive the truck any further down that road. But if you go around to the other side, you can come up from the opposite way. And so we quickly drove around our development and came down the road the opposite way, hoping that we'd run into it running down that road. We didn't. And so we pulled up to where there's a small electrical substation on the corner right there in the desert. It's about like 50 feet by 50 feet and has high brick walls. And so we pulled up kind of kitty corner to that in the desert and shut off the car to see if we could hear anything. And then we're shining flashlights around. And ultimately we had turned off the car, turned off the car lights, and even turned off the flashlights to just listen to see if we could hear anything. And we suddenly started hearing running, and it was really, really loud footsteps, really heavy. And we turned on the flashlights to see if we could see what was running, because it sounded like it was headed towards us. And we had quite a number of flashlights. Everyone had one. And we're shining them around, and we could not see what was running. We could not find anything running towards us or running anywhere. And it was really kind of odd. So we figured that it's got to be behind that substation, be the only place that it could be. So we kind of focused our lights there on the substation. And as we did so, there was suddenly a really big roar. Is the only way I could put it. And it was very deep, very loud, and it freaked us all out. And it roared a couple more times. And at that point, that was it for me. I was freaked out, and I was worried about, the safety of my kids. And so I told them, let's roll up the windows and go. This is it for the night. I'm not going to risk, the safety of any of you guys over this, because the roar to me sounded like it was a warning of, this is your chance to leave, I guess in a peaceful way. And I kind of took it for that and decided that it was best for us to leave at that point. But it was very strange, and I've not seen anything like that before in my life. It's very strange.
The roar is definitely terrifying. I've heard the roar myself, and I didn't hear it as close as you guys did. I heard it. It was probably a mile away, something like that. And it reminded me of a lion. I don't know if you guys have ever heard a lion roar, but it reminded me a lot of that. What was your impression of the roar?
That was my impression. I guess the thing that I could liken it to the most would be similar to a lion. It was a little briefer in duration, but I mean, you could pretty much feel the roar, and it was enough to certainly convey a sense of danger. And at that point is when I think the first time I instead of excitement, I felt actual fear. And if I were to gauge it, I would say it was probably about 50 yards away, 40, 50 yards from
It's close.
where we were at to where it roared.
That's really, really close. And, you know, pinning a creature into a corner that can rip your arms off and beat you with them. I mean, it sounds like he was pinned in.
Yeah, I don't think it could have gone anywhere without us seeing it because there's, you know, some scrub brush, but it certainly would have been taller than that. It couldn't have gone anywhere but behind there for us to not be able to easily see it.
What was your take on the roar, Dylan? Were you pretty much like, okay, I'm ready to go?
I think at the point where it roared, because we were with, like he said, it was me, my twin, and then one of our friends. So us three were like ready to get out the truck and go find this thing. Because this roar was loud and the footsteps were super loud too. So I think, because obviously being teenagers from Vegas, like this stuff, like never experiencing it our whole lives, like this stuff got us excited. Like we were like, okay, like what is this? Let's go find out. So when we heard this roar, I guess it got us like riled up, and we were ready to get out this truck with our flashlights and chase after this thing. And our dad was like, no. So he locked the truck and rolled up all the windows because the roar was obviously loud enough to scare all of us, and especially my dad who loves this stuff. So it was definitely something I've not heard before.
Yeah, I really think your dad did the right thing in rolling up the windows and leaving at that point. I do think that these creatures will give you a warning. Not always, but I think that they absolutely will give you a warning. They'll scream at you, they'll roar at you, they'll throw rocks at you, and it's right before they're about ready to ramp up what they're going to do. So I do think that most of the time they do give you some weird warning. And you guys do have this thing cornered. I mean, it has nowhere to go, really. It's a very, very dangerous situation. And Jonathan, I want to ask your opinion. I mean, I realize it's just your opinion, but, you know, I get these reports in Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, even some in Mexico. You would think, you know, when I hear the reports, I mean, they're spot on. I think the eyewitnesses are spot on with what they're seeing, but it makes me wonder, I mean, where do they go? Where would you hide in a place like that?
I don't know. You know, we don't live far from some big washes that come down from the foothills there that are fairly deep, as well as, it's probably half a mile to the foothills. They're a little bigger than foothills, that are the mountains just in front of Lake Mead, that there's a lot of different areas and little caves up there and things that it could hide in. I get the sense, I mean, just from living there for a while, that it may not be a permanent place that they reside so much as maybe they migrate through the area. This was in April, and so maybe it was migrating through the area. Where we live, because we have a big park with grass, we get oddly hundreds of rabbits that come into the park each night. I mean, literally, it's a huge amount of rabbits. And so what follows them are a bunch of coyotes. And so each morning, if you go out, you can find, there was one morning I drove around the development and I took pictures of them all, that ended up being 6 coyotes just sitting right on the road as you went around the development, not even scared of me. And so they follow the rabbits and eat them. And so I didn't know if maybe this was why it was hanging out there, was because it was a good area to find rabbits, coyotes, other type of food because of the park, and that maybe this is on some kind of migration route. Oddly, you know, I've listened to some of your podcasts and have heard about the little, you know, stone towers that sometimes people find on the trails. And oddly, that night, by the barricades, you know, there was nothing. And we were there looking around after that till we came home and then went back out again. You know, there's nothing in front of those barricades. And I went out the next morning, and at that time, actually in front of those barricades, right in front of them, was a little pyramid of stones that wasn't there at 1 a.m. the night before. I can't imagine somebody coming between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. building a little pyramid of stones right there on the road. I thought it was just kind of odd in light of what I've heard on some of your podcasts of people coming across those. And up behind the power substation, there were a couple more of those little stone pyramids stacked up. It was so a little bit strange, I thought.
Yeah, it's very strange to find that out there. Very, very strange. And Nevada has a long history of wildmen. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Lovelock Caves encounter. I know it's a little bit farther, probably closer to where Dylan lives now than where you're at, Jonathan. But you guys have heard of that account at the Lovelock Caves, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah, where the Indians were killing the giants and they killed them in the cave. And it always makes me wonder where they go. I remember this one guy who he sent me pictures of these things. They were on his property. And if I showed you the property, I mean, it's more desolate than Henderson, which, you know, Henderson's actually a little greener than Vegas, but it's still pretty desolate. And I'm like, where in the heck does this thing go? And like I said, even the guys down on the border, the Southern California, I don't know if you guys have ever been down there. There's not much cover down there at all. There's rolling hills and sagebrush, but I mean, it's pretty open for the most part. And, you know, some of those Border Patrol guys were running into them on a monthly basis. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
where in the world do those things go? I think you might be right, Jonathan. Maybe the caves, you know, there's a lot of cave systems around there. I've actually had a witness send me an encounter from Mount Charleston, which I know, again, is in the different direction from where this happened. But, you know, even Mount Charleston's kind of bare. I mean, it's kind of, I say bare because I'm coming from the Pacific Northwest. And so Charleston's actually one of the greener areas you can go. Did anything else ever happen out there?
No, not at that time. About 6 months before that, and I just mentioned it, and I don't know, you know, what it could be. It could have just been, I don't know, some sort of large dog or something. But it sounded really strange, and I actually have a recording of that too from our doorbell. I can send you. What it was is we were out. My other son Bryson and I were out on the driveway messing around with a telescope, and we started hearing this. It was like howling, but it sounded like wailing, and it was really, really loud. And it went on for about 5 minutes, and it was very, very creepy. And it was not a coyote. We have those yell around there all the time, and it was not a dog I've ever heard before there or after, and it didn't quite sound like a dog, and it was really creepy. I mean, creepy enough and loud enough that my daughter, who was in her room inside the house with the windows closed, came out to ask what was doing that wailing. And so that was just really creepy. We, in fact, got in the car and drove around trying to find where it was coming from, and we could never locate it. It was coming up from in the desert, kind of towards the same area, and we could never find it. And so, I mean, it could have been something else. I had never heard it before, and I've never heard it since that time. And so that was fairly creepy. And then, you know, I know Dylan's had some other experiences, but not tied with Bigfoot, as well as my daughter and I had an experience, but it's not tied to Bigfoot either.
Well, if you guys are willing to talk about it, I'd love to chat about it. If you guys don't want to go into it, that's cool too.
Oh, I'm happy to. I can tell you about mine, and then Dylan can tell you. I think I sent you pictures at the bottom of the email of the picture he took in his room of something standing in the corner,
yeah.
but which is creepy to me to look at. But my daughter and I, pulling into the development, we were looking out over the valley. Our development, because it's up in the foothills, you can overlook the whole valley. And we were looking out there as we pulled in through the gate, and there was a silver disc out over. It's hard to judge where exactly distance-wise it was, but it looked to be like out over the airport, and it was a really large silver disc sitting there in between two strips of clouds, and we're looking at it trying to figure out what on earth it could be. It started to move sideways, so we knew it wasn't, a cloud at all. The clouds were coming towards us, and it was too defined and dark silver to have been a cloud at the time. And as we're watching it, it just disappeared while we're staring at it. Within about a second, didn't shoot off, it just disappeared. And really strange.
That is strange. How big do you think it was?
Well, a jet flew over the top of it, and while it was hard to judge distance, it looked to me like it was about 5 times larger than the jet. I mean, it was massive. And I don't know why other people, maybe it was the way the clouds were situated, because it was in between a strip of clouds where our eye level was almost perfect to see between it, with it, lit up against the backdrop of the blue sky in between the strips of clouds. So I don't know if other people didn't see it. I got on YouTube to just see if somebody posted something, because it was so large and strange. I couldn't imagine that we were the only ones to see it. And somebody did post something from that day of what they said was a UFO over the strip, and it looks exactly like what we saw on that same day. So I don't know what it was, but it was really large, and watching it just fade into nothing in about a second was really strange. Oh,
yeah, it's unnerving.
Yeah. So to this day, I don't know what on earth that could have been.
And Dylan, tell me about this. I did see the pictures, and they are creepy. Tell me about that. Kind of what were you doing and what happened?
So, I believe it was around December. Zach Baggins had come out with a museum down at the Strip, the Zach Baggins Haunted Museum. And, we got with our friends and we went to this museum, and the whole thing was creepy. It just gives you a weird vibe, and we had experienced actually a lot of paranormal stuff while we were there. And I think my whole life I've been like really into like paranormal stuff and ghosts and just like trying to see if they're actually real, but nothing personal had ever happened to me. So we went to this museum, and I got home, and like once you leave that museum, you just feel weird. So it was like 2 a.m, and I had been Snapchatting my old girlfriend. And in the corner of my room, I have a couch, and on the middle of my couch, I have this salt rock lamp that lights up the whole corner of my room. And I'd taken a picture, and I noticed that the corner was gone, and that there was like a shadow blocking it. So as soon as I had noticed that, I jumped out of my bed and ran to my twin's room and hopped in bed with him. And in the normal photo I'd taken, you can't really see anything besides like a shadow or like a outline of like a body. So we got this app that like it loads up a filter that like makes a picture more clear, and it changes the picture to red. And when we had changed the photo to red, we noticed that there was like it was like a face, and then below the face you can see like a white dress in this corner, and it was creepy. It was definitely like a girl in a white dress sitting in that corner. And I think for about a week I slept with my twin in his room before I was like ready to go back and sleep in my room.
Did it eventually go away?
Yeah, so we had my dad bless the room just to make sure that nothing like bad had entered in like to the home or my room, or even followed us from the haunted museum.
Yeah, that's creepy, man. That's creepy.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
I would dread a call like that from my son, Jonathan.
Well, I went in.
It's not like you can hand him a 357 and say put a bullet in it next time you see it.
Yeah, it was a little unnerving. I walked into his brother's room and saw him in bed with him, and so the first thing which never happened. So I knew something had occurred. And so I asked him, why on earth are you sleeping in here? And then he showed me the picture, and it was a bit unnerving to look at that. Because to me, I can absolutely see what looks like somebody standing in an old, 1800s dress in the corner, and it's creepy to me.
Yeah, it's creepy when you sent them to me. I was like, I wonder why you sent this to me. I didn't finish reading the email. I just scrolled down, was looking at the pictures, and I was like, man, that is creepy, whatever that is. Yeah, no more haunted museums, I guess.
Yeah, no more visits.
Problem with that topic, man, you start playing with that, and it's like playing with fire,
Yeah.
Trying to get them to go away. Going back to Bigfoot, Dylan, would you want to see another one?
I would, yeah, actually. After seeing what I saw, it definitely boosted my interest in trying to find these things more and figure out what they do, what they're up to, and just getting to actually know more information about them. And my dad had talked to us after that experience about going up to where did you want to go up in Idaho? Oh, I think it was to Oregon. He wanted to do a trip for his 50th birthday up in Oregon to go Bigfoot finding, I guess. And I'm 100% down to do it because this definitely has my interest now.
Yeah, it definitely does. It'll consume you, especially after an encounter like you had and like you and your dad had. Dylan, let me ask you, what do you think Sasquatch is? And there's no dumb answer. There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious on what your thoughts are as far as what this creature actually is.
I can't even explain what Bigfoot is, I guess. I guess it's I'm not too because before, like you said, this was just in April, and before that I had not looked into Bigfoot at all, or even skinwalkers or any of that stuff. So in my word of choice, I couldn't even describe what Bigfoot is.
Yeah, and that's a fair answer too as well. Jonathan, what's your take? What do you think that they are?
I don't know. I think initially I thought that they were some kind of, I guess they call it a relic hominid, or some sort of ape, but I don't know. I think I've evolved a little bit from that, and I'm unsure. I think there's something a little more than just that. Us turning the corner and it being gone that fast. There was no way it could have ran somewhere that fast where our headlights shouldn't have lit it up. And so, I think to myself, there seems to be something a little bit unnatural tied to them also. And so I think there's something a little more to it than them just being some lost ape. And so it's hard for me to say exactly what they are, but I certainly think there's a little bit more to it than them simply just being an animal.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I often think about the guys in California, again, Southern California, on military bases. And I remember I did a Google Earth of that military base, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's nothing but desert around it. And these military police guys would talk about these creatures running on the base and setting off all sorts of alarms, and they would get into high security areas that were impossible to get into. And for the first couple months, they would chase them. They could never catch them. A lot of weird things. And then you look at that military base and you're like, if it's an ape, where in the world is it going during the day? I mean, there is nowhere to go. Except for maybe underground. That's my only answer. Yeah. Because even in that area, I don't think there was a lot of cave systems or anything for it to run to. It's one of those things, guys. It's life-changing to run into it. It's eye-opening. And it's very cool to have both of you guys on the show to come on and share it. I can't thank both of Dylan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for taking the time to come on and share what happened to you guys.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. Thanks again, guys. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. I'll be back on Sunday for the members. Until next time, everyone.